Welcome back to DONSLIFE, welcome to the channel, thanks for joining today. Here in the DONSLIFE garage we often need tools to get the job done, so today we're going to take a closer look at the new KAIWEETS thermal imaging camera. Let's go. Let's take a closer look at what we're working with today. This is the brand new KTI-W02 thermal imaging camera. I've already had it open and been using it a little while just to get familiar with the unit, but we'll go over some of the basics with you. So in here you're going to have your user manual and a spec sheet. I'll show you that in a second, but the first 12 pages are going to be English, and then you're going to have other languages that are available such as French and Spanish. As you flip through the manual, you'll see everything that's supposed to be contained in the box. Here's your product overview. Shows you all of the parts of the camera. You'll have all your key functions explained based on the buttons that are available on the camera itself. The following pages are explanations for all the basic operations, as well as examples of what the interface should look like as you go through it. I want to draw your attention to page 12, which is a very important page. Depending on what you're scanning, there is going to be a calibration that is needed with the camera. Different materials will have different emitting characteristics depending on what they are. So if we were scanning wood, for example, we would have a preset here of 0.85. We would adjust our camera to that setting and we would get more accurate readings. So this reference chart could come in handy depending on what you're scanning. Here we have our calibration certificate indicating that this has been calibrated before it left the factory. And then this document here is all your detailed specs. These are all going to be available on the website. I'll leave a link in the video description below. There's a few things I'll just highlight on this spec sheet for you that are important. So it does have an infrared resolution of 256 by 192. It's focus free, so we don't have to worry about focusing on whatever we're scanning. It has a nice wide temperature range of -20 Celsius to 550 degrees Celsius, or -4 Fahrenheit all the way up to 1022 Fahrenheit. There's a couple different settings to have the lower temperature range or higher. We have a rechargeable lithium-ion battery, good for up to 16 hours. Let's have a closer look at the unit itself. Now it does come in this nice hard shell zipper case. Like I said, I've already had this open and been using it before. We have our USB-C charging cable. We have our AC adapter. Mine's the North American version. And then here is the camera itself. And I have to tell you, when you first hold onto it, it is much sturdier and a higher quality plastic than you would expect. It is a quality feel piece. Attached, we already have a wrist lanyard, so we don't drop the camera if we're working from any heights. That'll help keep it safe. On the top, we have a little cover here. This is where you keep your trans flash or micro SD card. Not the easiest thing to get out. This one's a 32 gig by SanDisk. And here's your USB-C port. This has two functions, one to charge the unit and two to hook up to a Windows compatible PC, so you can use some software from KAIWEETS to analyze the images that you take. Let's take a look at the front of the camera. So you have a lot going on here. This top lens is your visible lens. So this is just like the human eye, like the camera we're using to record this video. It is going to see the world the way that you and I see it. Below it is your infrared lens. So this lens here is what is going to pick up the infrared spectrum and help us measure our temperatures. And right down here in the bottom corner is our laser. This is actually to help us with targeting whatever we want to read the temperature of. I think that is a really cool feature. And lastly, in this corner here, we have the spot lamp. This is able to be turned on or off, really meant to just help illuminate things in darker working conditions. Now it's time to take a closer look at the camera. Let's take the protective film off. There we go. Now to turn it on, we hold down this button here, and it's supposed to have a very fast boot up time. Not like the previous generations, which could take several seconds. Let's try it out. Oh wow, look at that. Quick boot up. Let's change perspective a little bit here and give you a demonstration of the different camera modes. So right now I'm pointed at a garage door that faces the back of my home. And right now the sun outside is pointed at the other side of it. So this garage door should be warmer than anything in the surrounding area. But right now we're on the visible light setting. And you can see to the right hand side we have a color palette there. So the hotspot should be you know, the orangey or reddish colors, and the cold spot should be the lighter blue colors. But we can change that palette at any time in the menu, which we'll look at later. But right now we're going to demonstrate just the different settings for the camera. So using the up or the down button here, I can give it a press. So I'm on visible light, press it again. Now I'm on picture in picture. So what that does is it uses the center area as my infrared camera, but lets me see the visible light areas around it so I can kind of get an idea. This may help you if you're just trying to really pinpoint something in a larger area. You might like that feature. Let's switch to infrared only. So there we go. You can see the garage door is blooming nice and hot because of the temperature difference from the surrounding area, because the sun is touching it right now. This next one is called multispectral image fusion. So really what that's doing is it's combining some of the visible light with the infrared so we can see more detail in the image. And if I push it again, I go back to visible light. So depending on what you're scanning, I back up here and we look at the old classic pickup. You know, picture in picture isn't revealing a lot. If I go to infrared, it can be a little difficult to even know what I'm pointing at, which is where this setting here with the multispectral image fusion might make it a little easier. I can tell it's a truck now. So I think this is a good demonstration, just some of the settings that you have with the different cameras at the same time. Now let's take a closer look at the menus. Push the menu button here and you can see that we have a gallery. We can look at all the photos that we've taken, can adjust our temperature ranges. Here's the emissivity section that I was talking about, where you can change it to correspond with different surfaces. You can see they're all preset in here. Just going to leave it where it was at. We can hit the back button, comes back to the main menu. Here's where we can change what our palettes look like. Let's have a look at that. So let's try this one here. We'll go back and you can see my color palette. If I go and look at the garage again, to some that might be easier to see than what we had it on before. So there's just an example of how you can change your palettes. Here's an example of another one. That one's quite colorful. I think I prefer its default setting, so I'm going to go back to that. So we can adjust our center point, which is really just the crosshairs on the screen. We do want them visible, so that's why we have it on. We can change our temperature units from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So this next setting here is to have a range of temperatures within an area. So right now it is set to one temperature wherever my center point is. If I go back, I can pick a tighter area like this. So you can see I've got two different temperatures within that area, so it's giving me a range. And I can keep expanding it until it goes back to what we had before. So there's a larger area, and you get the idea. We'll go back to what it was originally. We still have a range on the scale on the right hand side, but this shows us wherever our center point is. We have an alarm setting, so we can choose if we find a temperature outside of the ranges that we set, it will set off an audible alarm and alert us that we have exceeded one of those values. Now there are many more settings that we could go through. I'll highlight a couple more. Right here we have our laser pointer turned on. So if I point at a surface and pull the trigger, you can see we have a laser pointer there to guide us. I think that is really good to have, especially if you're working in a tight area and you need an exact temperature of something that you're pointing at. I think that's a great way to go and a great feature to have. We also have our floodlight setting that I was talking about. So check that out. And that should turn the light on the front when I pull the trigger. So that can help if we're working in darker areas like this. We can use the spot lamp to see better. Now I know that this setting here has to do with the effect of ambient temperature reflecting on the surface that we are looking to scan or measure. So right here it says 73.4 Fahrenheit. In my garage it is 70 degrees. Now I'm not the expert here, but I do think that if we bring this closer to the ambient temperature of the room, then we'll get more accurate readings with any reflective impact that ambient temperature may have on a surface. And set our date and time, language, reset it, format the SD card, set the transparency for our picture-in-picture, adjust the visual settings for our screen, change the USB setting for your computer or for charging. So projection would be to hook it up to the computer. We want to leave it on USB mode for charging. And then we can check the current firmware and any information about the camera. That's a pretty comprehensive look at the menu, but I think it's time for a real-world test. Earlier I mentioned I've been using this for a few days. I actually took it camping with me and checked out everything on my camper to make sure that there were no trouble areas. Just an example of some other applications that you could put this to use. Now the experiment that I've come up with to put this to use has to do with the range inside our home. So not that long ago, I replaced a burner switch for one of the elements and it's working perfectly. But then I noticed that I have another one out of the 4 that are there that doesn't seem to be working quite right either. So now that I know I have one working perfectly, I'm going to compare the 2 and see if the voltage, or in this case the temperature, when I have them at the same setting, if there's a variance there, then I know it's probably the burner switch on the other element. So here's my appliance. This burner works perfectly. I know I put a new switch in there. I'm gonna leave it on 4. I can already feel the heat coming off of it. This one is not acting correctly. We're going to put it on 4. And now we're going to measure the temperatures. You can see this one's come to temperature a lot quicker than this one. I'm just gonna adjust this to be the larger size radius. So now it's more comparable. So that one just got the temperature, this one's getting the temperature. But it's rare for these to be defective. It's usually the switches, but let's do a temperature reading. Starting with the one that works well, kind of in the middle zone here. Let's go right in the middle, just about 400, around 400. And go to the middle on this side, 334, 340. So you can see this one is lower. And that tells me all I need to know. This one here on the same setting is a lower temperature. So we'll just turn it off before we burn the house down. So there's an example of how we can use this in a real world situation. So saving me some money with some self-diagnosis and repair by the KAIWEETS KTI-W02 thermal imaging camera. So that's my review of the KAIWEETS KTI-W02 thermal imaging camera. If you want to check one out for yourself, I'll leave a link in the video description below, as well as a discount code DONSLIFE15 to save yourself 15%. If you found this video helpful or informative, please hit that like button. Please consider subscribing, and we'll talk to you next time.